Hello.
Good afternoon or good morning or good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good day.
Welcome to session 2 in room 1. This session will be about common mistakes that publishers make when publishing to IATI for the first time. And your hosts are myself, Audrey Migot-Adholla. I am a BA Business and Data Analyst in the IATI Tech team. And my co-host is
Thea Schepers. And I'm Open Data Specialist, IATI Advisor in the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
And we also have with us Pele, who works with Thea.
Yes.
Who might jump in to add things if we forget to say them. Please feel free to do so, Pele.
I was about to say, and he's not allowed to talk, so we'll have to... No. Everyone, including Pele, is allowed, I think, to interrupt us with questions and or comments. Perhaps the chat is best for that. Yeah.
Can I just check that everybody can see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up.
I see it.
Yes, wonderful.
Wendy sees it too. Analyst, I think we're good.
Perfect. Okay. In the interest of time, I shall begin.
Yes.
So I'm going to do the first half of the presentation, and then Thea will take over and do the second half. And we do have a time for questions at the end. Okay. Yeah. Just some housekeeping. Please make sure your Zoom display says your name and your organization. And we do have interpretation. And if there are questions, please add them to the chat box, and we will either address them on the fly or we can come back to them at the end. I will admit, while I'm presenting, I can't see the chat box. So please do shout out if you need to. Okay, some background to this session. We appreciate that publishing to IATI can be an overwhelming process. And after seeing a few publishers come through, we noticed that there are common traps that they fall into. So between us, we've collected what we believe to be the top 10 most common mistakes that publishers make when they're publishing their data to IATI. And we're going to show you the mistakes and talk you through how to avoid them in future. So number 1 is confusion between the org ID, the publisher ID, and also issues that arise around API keys and so on. So in brief, when you register to IATI, you'll need to register several accounts, unfortunately, but the most important part of your registration is the organization ID. And this is the ID that is linked to the registration agency of the country where your organization is registered, followed by usually the registration number or some other type of unique identifier, so that we can find you not only in our system, but sometimes that same org ID can be used in other databases as well. The publisher ID, on the other hand, is unique to IATI, and that's usually an abbreviation of your organization's name. And that's what we use within our own systems to be able to give you your own account and your own URL where you can access all of the information about your particular organization. And then if you're using certain third-party tools to publish, such as agestream, you will also be asked to use an API key. And that can be found within your IATI account. But the common trap we see is that people stumble when using an API key that is not linked to the admin account, because of course you can have many user accounts within your IATI account. So you need to make sure that you're using the API key that's linked to the admin, and then you shouldn't have any problems. But as always, and we're going to sound like a broken record because we will keep saying this, if you ever get stuck, you can email support and we will help you.
Yes.
Number 2 is not publishing an organization file. This is a commonly overlooked item, but it's very helpful internally to be able to add some additional information about your organization. I've used Oxfam as an example here for their organization file. And it just gives us a quick snapshot, I guess, of all the things that we need to know about your organization when you last published, things like your identifier, country of registration, and so on. This is something that you could always go back and add. And again, certain third-party tools will prompt you to add this anyway when you're first setting up. But in short, every publisher should have at least one activity file and at least one, well, you can't have more than one, but one organization file as well. Okay. Number 3 is confusing agestream with IATI. So if you're using agestream or indeed other third-party tools that require registration, it can be confusing that you need to register on IATI first, and then you need to set up an account with something like agestream, and then you'll be able to, the two of them can talk to each other once you've set up your API key. But you won't be able to use something like agestream until you have also published to IATI, because it won't recognize where you're trying to publish to, if that makes sense. So in short, at the beginning, there is a lot of setup. There are a lot of accounts that you need to register for, lots of usernames and passwords to remember. But once you have them all set up and they're all talking to each other, it should be straightforward.
Yeah.
This one is if you are somewhere along the delivery chain of whatever it is that you're publishing in terms of your activities and your projects, you may have people on either side of you who are contributing to the activity. You need to make sure that you put in the correct participating org reference. And the top line of the screen grab just below the title has an example of a participating organization and also what their role is within the delivery chain of this particular activity. What we've seen sometimes is people get confused about what that reference should be, and they use references that are internal to their own organization rather than the ones recognized by IATI. But within the IATI ecosystem, all of the different references for organizations need to be recognized by IATI. So if you put in a series of numbers or some text that is unique to your own organization, it's not helpful within the context of IATI publishing. So that's another one to look out for. And I believe, Thea, over to you.
Yeah, we're halfway, so I'm taking over the rest of we are now at number 6, I think.
Yes, please let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Yes, so this is number 6. This is, I don't know how people even manage to, but sometimes you don't publish an XML file, but some other type. You have HTML files, PDF files, everything, we see it. So after you've published, check what you've done by going to the registry and see if you've actually gotten an XML file, or perhaps also use the validator, which you see a screenshot of here now. This file is not an IATI file. That's a fairly critical error, as you also see. It's very purple. So make sure it's XML. I think agestream does this automatically. So it's usually a thing that happens in other systems. So especially when you use something built internally, check this before you publish or after you publish. Right, next one. Number 7, activity IDs that don't start with the organization ID. See a couple of examples here. The Ghana example has XMDAC 41114 as the organization ID, I think, and then project, and then the project number is probably the activity ID. All of that combined is the actual activity ID. An activity ID that does not start with organization ID is not a correct activity ID. This happens a lot. It also happens when you use your donor's activity ID to refer to, which we in the ministry ask people to do. If it doesn't start with an organization ID, it's not correct. Next one. think we're at 7. I lost track. We're probably somewhere at 7. This is a very sad one. Luckily, fewer and fewer publishers do this, but it still happens. Creating a new activity either for each quarter or for each indicator. That leads to a lot of extra work, and it's not what we want you to do at all. It's often caused by requirements where we say you need to publish every quarter, and then looking from a financial viewpoint, some publishers may think, oh, so I need a new report each quarter, so I will start a new activity each quarter. This is not what you should do. Also, the term activity sometimes leads people to think of an activity as an activity you do within a project, but the activity is the project, and your indicator is what you do within those projects that you will be measuring. So if you have a project and you end up with like 50 activities, you've probably done it wrong. Maybe that's a good way of a rule of thumb. If you have so many activities that it becomes impossible to manage, you may have done the structure wrong and done something like this. Again, if you're not sure, contact Audrey and I both run help desks. Audrey does the overall IATI help desk for the IATI registry, and I work for specifically the Netherlands, our requirements. So contact one of us through the help desk contact information, and we'll help you. Next one. Yes, confusing transaction types. Of course, confusing any code list is a problem, but this happens a lot when we check people's files, which we do a lot lately. We see incoming funds confused for incoming commitments, expenditures that have the donor as the spending party and not the. So what happens is it's just the wrong type, or it has the donor. It has incoming, or outgoing confused. So make sure you use the right type. Just check the code list, and also make sure that if it's outgoing, whatever it is, you are the paying party, and if it's incoming, then you are the receiver organization, and so it's always from the perspective of the activity. Next one. Not filling in baselines. This is my favorite one because it's super tragic. When people spend a lot of time putting in data about progress on their indicators, they often have actuals, they sometimes have targets, and very often they miss the baselines. That's very tragic because we can't measure progress that way. We need to measure progress, we need 3 things. We need the baseline, the actual, and the target. If we have one of those 3 missing, we don't know where you started, and we don't know where you want to be, so we also don't know where you are in between those 2. So baselines is the most commonly missing, and it often, for example, the most common dashboard that we use in the ministry to measure progress needs the baselines. So if they don't have baselines, we see nothing in the most used visual. It looks like you didn't even add any data. So super tragic. If you have an output indicator that starts at 0, the baseline is 0, fill in that 0. It's a very important 0. Next one. sensitive data, a very, shall we say, relevant lately. It's not just region or country. You could publish anything from names of villages where very fragile people live. You could be mentioning topics that are sensitive in the country where you work. You could the way to fix that is either not mentioning the country but region, or being less specific about the problems you work on. You could be, it doesn't always have to be things like this. It could also be personal information in the contact information that leads to issues maybe later on. Something happens in your country and suddenly the fact that you worked on these projects becomes a problem, then hopefully you will not have put your contact details in your IATI file. Could also be that you're publishing donors who don't want to be published. Could be anything. Whatever it is, also check the narrative texts that you have in your data, descriptions, the title. Sometimes it's very simple, just change the title to something less specific. But country and region, country specifically, is sometimes the most important change you can make. Yes, number 11. This is number 11. The mistake is to not ask for help. Audrey is a great help desk person. Pelle and I are here. Whatever you do, go on the IATI Connect platform to ask your question to others or to specialists, but also often people can help each other with their problems. Doesn't always have to be the people who work for help desks. Ask for help. We should probably, do we have a slide with email addresses and stuff, or did we not think of that?
That was an oversight on my part. If one of my colleagues could add to the chat box the email addresses for both the Netherlands Help Desk and the IATI Support Help Desk, then that would be very helpful. But I'm going to stop sharing now and invite our audience to please ask questions now while you have the opportunity. Yeah. Obviously, we're available any other time, but it would be very interesting to hear have any of you made those mistakes yourself? Were any of those a surprise to you? Are there any that you'd like to add that we might have forgotten?
Maybe a lot of people will say, oh, I don't do any of these things, so I'm not doing as badly as I thought. That's entirely possible.
Yeah. I mean, if
or a 12th month, maybe.
If nothing on those slides resonates with you, then you're doing an excellent job.
Yeah. If you're thinking, I don't know why people do this, well, good. Someone is trying to connect to audio.
I see that.
I'm not sure if that means there's a question coming. Any other comments are also possible, of course.
Yes, that's a good point in the chat about using the validator. There are, IATI has a validator tool, which is super comprehensive. As Thea mentioned when we were looking at that particular slide, there is a color coding system to show you the severity of the errors that the validator has picked up in your data, purple being the worst, and then I believe it's red and orange. But what's good is that it will show you exactly what the error is and where in your data it has occurred. And you're able to run your XML file through the validator to check what those errors are. We as a technical team also do sporadic checks on data where there are errors, or sometimes data users will alert us to errors that they found in some data that they're trying to use. And usually in those cases, we'll get in touch with the publisher to let them know that there is an error and suggestions on how to fix it, while of course also offering our support if they're struggling to accurately troubleshoot the issue. Go on, Thea.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, if we have time, because this is basically a newbies session, we can maybe show the validator.
Sure.
I'll, if I can share, can I share it?
I believe, hold on. No,
oh, wait, I can.
You can?
Yeah. Okay. Does YATI Validator appear here?
Yes.
Okay, so the URL is yativalidator.yatistandard.org. You could check local files, but we'll go to a public data viewer. Anyone volunteering? Let me just randomly pick one. So you pick your organization from the list, then you can, ooh, this is bad news. You can pick between your organization file and your activities file, or actually any file. This one is not doing very well. It was already showing. Oh, okay, at least there are, so you see 2 types of really problematic things and 7 types of warnings, and you can click, you can tick and untick them and see where these things occur. So if you have thousands of errors, but it's the same type of error each time, and you might have a system that systematically does this wrong, you're not doing so badly. Let me also do a random see. I'll do the activity file again. 14 errors and 6 warnings. So yeah, it just shows you what's going wrong. Once you've, don't be too alarmed if you get messages here. It's rare that it's all green and it's all perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. You have to, I think it's most important, especially if you're new to publishing, to improve every time you publish. And this is one way to achieve that.
Occasionally, there are also errors whereby special characters have been added. I noticed when you were looking at ActionAid just then, sometimes there's a space where there shouldn't be one, or other things that are picked up in the machine readable side of things that prevent that from happening. So that's another thing to look out for.
Yeah, you just see what happens, and you don't, I mean, things will not collapse if you have these. This is actually not so bad if you have a lot of activities, but well, the fewer the better. Okay. Anything else?
Questions, comments? That isn't obviously an exhaustive list of error types, just the most common to look out for. There's all sorts that people can make, but as a new publisher, those are the most common traps that you're likely to encounter.
Yeah. Well. Oh, Analyst.
Analyst.
My physical hand there. I was just going to say I particularly like answer number 11, ask for help, because one comment that I've received when speaking to potential new publishers is, oh, we don't want to contact the help desk because we might just get a bot. And I'm saying, no, you will not get a bot. You have access to people at the other end of the IATI help desk, and there are real people ready and willing to help. So thank you.
Yes, I can confirm. I am a real person, not an AI, not a bot.
Maybe you should write more lively emails, Audrey. This is
we have another question from Nancy. Please go ahead, Nancy.
Hello, Nancy.
Hi guys, not
Hi.
really, not a question at all, not much to add. I just wanted to say thank you so much, and I found that list really interesting and really useful. And from when I was new to IATI, I could relate to pretty much all of them. I'm grateful. Maybe I shouldn't admit that, but I just have. That's not what our experience is these days, but yeah, kind of brought some memories back for me though. But yeah, it was really interesting to see. And I do a lot of work with some of the partner organizations that Sightsavers works with. And so this list is going to inform those conversations going forward as well. So thank you very much.
Excellent.
Welcome.
If anyone here is now slightly shy to admit that these things go wrong in their files and doesn't know how to fix it, that's also, you can know what you're doing wrong, but how to fix it is perhaps a second one. Just email general IATI support, or if you're one of the Dutch partners, email us and we'll help you. There's newbies corners on IATI Connect as well. So yeah.
That's a particularly useful resource because, as you said, Thea, sometimes the answer is found faster by asking each other publishers who are doing similar things, similar types of projects. But we handle the comments on that too. So you're never alone as a publisher.
You're never alone should be the final idea here.
Good. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, then we can wrap up. I'm just going to share the slide for the next session. So our next session in this room will be insights on how publishers publish. So the results of a publisher analysis that the business analysts within the IATI team have been doing. And we have several rooms for the different types of organizations that were analyzed, where we'll be doing short presentations and discussion sessions. Links to the other sessions will be in the chat box, but the URL is also there. And you can see the titles for the 2 rooms that will be happening. I believe the next session starts at the top of the hour. Yes. Annalise has a question.
Yes, I have one more hand. It just goes back to that last point that you were mentioning, actually. Let's say I'm a new publisher. Are you, is the help desk able to assist by putting me in touch with another publisher who's recently gone through the same process, who might be able to give a little bit more hand-holding, you know, based on my particular publisher type? Sorry,
Yes,
if you want
absolutely. We've done that in the past where we had, let's say somebody has data that's structured in a very specific way, that's very specific to their organization. Sometimes they will often ask us to let them know how other similar organizations have been doing it so that they can have a look at their data to understand the best way to go about publishing. The other instance, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is data users. They're often overlooked because we focus so much on the publishers themselves, but there are plenty of people using the data. And so there have been times where they would like more information to understand the nature of a publisher's data. And we've been able to put them in touch with each other because then they can explain it directly to them, probably better than we could. And that's been super helpful as well. Of course, you know, we ask permission first rather than just sending emails left and right, but that's been a really useful thing to do, is put people in touch with the direct contact that they need to get the information from.
I have a follow-on question. Actually, it's less a question and more of a shameless plug.
Go ahead.
But because you mentioned one of the top tips to avoid was publishing sensitive data. And my shameless plug, therefore, is for tomorrow morning's, sorry, I say morning, but for tomorrow's opening session, which is around balancing responsible transparency, responsible publishing. And that is a session which is going to be led by USAID and the State Department jointly with the IATI Secretariat. And it's looking at precisely this what thorny question around sensitive data, what should and shouldn't be published, what proactive moves can be taken by publishers versus what should be or maybe redacted at a later point. So that is my shameless plug, and I will now not raise my physical hand anymore. But
not shameless at all. Very useful. Thank you, Annalise.
Very important issue. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Glad that you found it useful. We'll say it one more time. Please get in touch with us if you have any issues at all. We're happy to support. And yes, we'll close now. Details about the next sessions.
I'm sorry, I'm just seeing a question coming in Spanish, and Spanish is not my forte, but it's like they're looking for a connecting to a monitor in Latin America.
Yeah. Lucky for you, I speak Spanish, but I'm not gonna.
There we go. Please look in the chat there.
Okay, I'll have a look at the chat.
Oh, our interpretation is in Spanish as well, so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the answer to the question, Diego, is that if you're trying to connect with specific people in Latin America, you're still better off to contact support with specifics about what it is that you need help or coaching with, and then we can point you in the right direction. Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll close there. And the next session is in about 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to my glamorous co-host, Thea.
Thank you, Audrey.
Okay, thank you, everyone.